Hi, I'm Mike Hatton, and for over 20 years I've been in a management role that saw me working with other managers from entry level up to and including the C-suite. The experience gained have positioned me to help many other leaders manage the stresses of not having enough time at work, not having enough family time, neglecting their health, and many other challenges magnified by the recent pandemic. I founded Human Cornerstone Facilitations LLC in 2008. It was based on the need to help managers improve their productivity and that of their team. I would like to show you the roadmap to becoming a great leader by harnessing your team's strengths. Welcome to my show, Cornerstone, where the foundations of leadership begin. Hi, my name is Mike Hatton, and my show is called Cornerstone. I'd like to thank you for watching today and welcome you to the show. It's a show about leadership, people who've shown incredible business acumen, and today is no different. When I spoke to the guest about what we were going to talk about today, I was a little surprised. Usually people go right into their business and what they do and all that, but his face lit up and he told me that immediately he'd been married 34 years, he had 3 wonderful children, 2 son-in-laws and 3 grandchildren. So that tells me this is going to be a really good interview that you'll enjoy. He's a managing partner of a company called Quartermaster Tax, and he has an interesting perspective on the tax code and a service that I think will help everyone. Please welcome to the show, Don Rasmussen. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. So, the question comes up, what do you do? And the reality is what I found out over the 35 years I've been working in owning 3 CPA firms and working with business professionals from all over. And that is, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And we did some research and found about 78% of business owners feel like they're overpaying on taxes. And what we realized is that there is a desperate need for guidance on how to reduce those taxes. And that's really what we do, is we come alongside them and their CPA. One thing about Quartermaster Tax Management, I've sold my last CPA firm 5 years ago, but we decided that we wanted to come alongside and be the team member, along with the client and their CPA, to actually provide unique, proactive tax planning tools. So.
That's great. And where are you headquartered?
Yeah, we're located just north of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay. I know that's where your offices are, but you don't limit your practice to the North Carolina area. Oh. You are all over the United States, I've found out.
Yeah, that's correct. Matter of fact, I was in Los Angeles last week, and so we're from coast to coast. And we actually have some business in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands as well. So yeah, we're pretty global.
So I'd like to drill into what you do a little more.
Okay.
Because I was at a conference in Phoenix recently, and I met one of your partners there, one of your employees, and it was such an interesting presentation of what he does and how he helps people that I think this is something that people really want to know about. You have a unique niche of digging into the tax code, and it has to do with improving patient outcomes. There's a tax benefit for companies who are in the medical fields and improving patient outcomes. Would you like to explain that?
Sure.
And go into that for me?
Absolutely. And so Section 41 of the IRS code is referring to the research and development tax credits. And so back in 1981, they were actually made permanent in 2015. And so the whole idea is most professionals, most practitioners did not realize they would qualify. Under the new guidance in 2015, they opened it up to the medical industry. Up to that point, it had been pretty much manufacturing and technology. So we realized that there was a great need, and we discovered there was really a vacuum from that standpoint. And so we really decided to focus specifically on the medical industry. Not that we don't get referrals over to the technology and the manufacturing, but the reality is our emphasis and focus is towards the medical industry.
That's very interesting. And just to prove to you that I was really interested in the presentation about your company that I saw, and that it impressed me that much, is you have gotten tens of thousands of dollars in some cases, maybe even more, back for companies that they didn't realize was there for the taking. And this is all, I mean, it's completely legit. You know, that's the first thing people ask. It sounds too good to be true. But this is completely legit. You want to tell us a little bit about that and maybe a couple of examples?
Absolutely. So we can go back 3 years. So the statute of limitations to go back and to amend tax returns is 3 years. So what we do is we take our prospective clients through a process, and that is gathering up documentation and doing an interview with one of our tax attorneys. Our tax attorney is going to do a deep dive down into whatever they're doing, whether it's a chiropractic practice, a medical practice, whatever it may be, to determine if they're improving upon a patient outcome or improving upon a technology or a manufacturing situation. From there, we can determine what percentage of their time is utilized for qualified research activities. So I'll give an example of a chiropractor. So a chiropractor may use different modalities such as decompression or electric stem or laser. So the combination of those modalities along with the adjustment and measuring improvement, that allows them to qualify. We just have to determine how much each week they spend doing that, themselves and their staff. So then we determine what percentage of the time, and then we'll calculate that against the wages. So we go in there and determine, okay, your wages, your W-2, and the percentage of that comes back as a credit. When I say a credit going forward, we can go back and get a refund. Actually, a check from the IRS comes back to our clients. And just to give you a couple examples, I have a chiropractor in the Bay Area out in California. Saw him this weekend here, and he actually got back about $108,000 for the last 3 years. Now, there's some states too, like California, they allow us to go back 4 years. And so in his case here, our conversation became a 6-figure opportunity for him that he didn't even realize, and his CPA didn't realize, because most CPAs out there are not aware that it does apply to the medical industry. Part of the reason why is because historically, up till 2015, had been limited, as I said, to manufacturing technology. We hired a company by the name of BDO, which is one of the largest firms in the world, to do a due diligence study to make sure it did apply to our clientele, the chiropractors, the medical, the dental. And we come to find out that, yes, they do qualify.
I'm familiar with BDO, and BDO, if you're watching, I'd love to have you on the show. And that's the interesting part that you said that I took away from this conference. This is not just for like the purchase of a medical device, or you did research on that. This is actually for the time your staff spent on it. And if I heard right at the conference, even if it was something you decided not to do and you didn't proceed with the purchase of the actual equipment or anything like that, just the fact that you did the research, that qualifies.
Certainly,
well.
Yeah. So there's a 4-part test when it comes to the IRS. Number 1 has to be technological in nature. Number 2, there's got to be a trial and error process. Number 3, the purpose is to remove uncertainty and to increase the performance and functionality, whether that's a patient or a process. So yes, that's correct. Even though you may not have actually implemented, just doing the research to determine how that would be applicable and how it would be beneficial to your patients or to your clients.
Okay, very interesting. And I know when I was at this presentation, the first question that popped into my mind, and you probably get this question a lot, and it probably pops into everybody else.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought was, how does this increase my risk of an audit? Yeah. And the answer and the process that you used was absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And I think you know where I'm going with that. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Mike, that question comes up quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Does it put me on the radar with the IRS? Well, I can't say it would never, but the reality is it's changed here this year. January 10th of this year, the IRS put us into a position not of post-approval, but pre-approval. So when we go to request for the research and development tax credits for historical, in the last 3 years or 4 years, we have to provide all of our documentation at that time to the IRS, and they're going to approve it. And we've never had anyone denied, but they're going to approve it at that time. Now, not to say the IRS couldn't come back and second guess themselves, but highly unlikely. And even though it's a lot of work on our part, we are glad to have it just because it eliminates, number one, the possibility of them not understanding why we applied for the credit. So for the IRS perspective, they see that this is a chiropractor, this is a medical professional, a dental, and they see the rationale behind it. And so when we get that approval right up front, our clients know that this has already been reviewed and they have peace of mind that everything's good to go from there.
They're with you basically every step along the way. So it would almost be fair to say that they're in some ways a partner in the process with you as you go along. And I know the IRS gets much maligned, and I'm not here to malign the IRS, and I'm not here as an advertisement for the IRS, but I am here to say that I have worked with government agencies before, the FAA and the FDA, and it's been my experience that if you bring them in the process early and you work with them and you don't hide the cards from them and you tell them what you're doing and get it approved along the way, they're very happy to work with you and happy to help with you. Would you say the same?
Yeah, absolutely. The IRS looks at intent.
Yes.
So our intent is to, again, bring them into a partnership of saying, here's full disclosure of why this particular client of ours qualifies for Section 41 credits. And so instead of trying to push things through, and that's actually what created this need of pre-approvals, because unfortunately there's been companies out there that have been, we'll just throw it at the fan and see what sticks type of situation, and unfortunately that's come back to bite some. But the good news is if you're getting everything pre-approved, all is good.
Okay. And we've talked primarily about medical devices. Are there similar programs for other industries that you work with or other businesses?
Of course, we get a lot of referrals, Mike, from a whole variety of different businesses. I'll just give you some examples. We just did a technology company here in the Dallas area, AI technology, remarkable information in the medical field. We did a ballistic glass company that does, for vehicles, for airlines and different ones like that there. And then also we did a GPS for F-16s, a company that provides GPS. So very, very interesting parallels out there. But yeah, so it does apply for a lot of different industries, not just for the medical industry, of course.
That's very interesting. One of the shows I did recently was about a female entrepreneur who had started a virtual reality training company for airlines. Pilots, when they're trained, many times they put a piece of paper up on the wall that has all the switches, and they have to sit and imagine, well, if I move this switch, that's what it would do. And if I move that switch, that's what it would do. Well, she had developed this virtual reality company where you can actually wear the visor, and we did a demo on the show. It was really funny to watch. But if you move the switch actually moves, and the system actually comes into operation, and it gets people ready to go into the simulator and saves money and things like that.
Very unique,
something like this
absolutely
could be beneficial to a company.
Oh yes, very much
like
so.
Ours.
Yes, because she's improving upon a process. And so by bringing that type of technology into play, now if she did the programming, even more so. So again, that gets into a little bit different vein of information, but ultimately she's improving upon her process where, again, she's saving dollars. Now the key here is that from a U.S. base, so the wages have to be created here in the United States. The IRS and the government wants to encourage businesses to use U.S.-based employees. Now, another question that comes up, particularly in our programming, in our technology area, how about if I use independent contractors? Well, the good news is, as long as they're U.S.-based, you still get a credit. It does reduce it down to about 65% of what you would normally gotten if they were a W-2 wage employee. So it doesn't eliminate that. And I find that a lot of technology companies, of course, outsource some of their programming and things such as that.
Fantastic. This is really interesting to me, and I'm the guy that chases squirrels because so many different things interest me. But this is fascinating, and it's something I didn't know existed, and I'm sure that my viewers will be highly interested in this, and I get a lot of emails about this. Let's switch gears a little bit, unless there's anything else you want to add about that.
I think we're pretty.
Did I leave anything out?
Nope, we're good to go.
Okay. You're obviously a leader, a business leader, an entrepreneur. I'd like to find out what inspired you. One person, maybe 2 or 3 points about them, who inspired you as a leader, who you look up to as a leader, and who really got you started and was a good mentor.
Yeah, great question. So a unique situation. My grandparents were raising me. My grandfather was a business owner, and he is actually the one who encouraged me. It was a great example, and he actually encouraged me to pursue the accounting field. He said, you have a great way with numbers and so on and so forth. But my grandfather was probably the most impactful for me from the beginning years of my career. And then, of course, over the years, I've met some remarkable men and women, both, that have impacted my life. I have some great friends here in the great state of Texas. One is by the name of Jerry Phelps, another one, Elwin Johnston, that have spoken into my life and given me some real clear direction. And I've had CPAs in my life have also had a big impact. My former partner, when I sold my practice 5 years ago, is a great friend, and matter of fact, probably the most brilliant CPAs that I've ever met in my life. And it's just those type of situations. And of course, most recently, a tremendous friend that we both share, and that's Fab Mancini. Fab, of course, was the past president of Parker University, and truly, as we were discussing earlier, is one who wants to push people up and really has a positive impact upon folks.
Fab, or Dr. Fabrizio Mancini, as I call him, he was on the show, and he's a person truly with a servant's heart. So
he does,
thank you for mentioning that. I try to highlight him because he's been a big influence in my life also. So I'm glad to hear you say it about your grandparents, because when I work with clients and I talk to them about leaders and what inspired them, I try to find out, how to reach them and how to work with them. I've always had the simple belief that the foundations of leadership that I learned started bouncing on my dad's knee, in your case, bouncing on your grandparents' knee, or bouncing on someone's knee that was important to them in life. Of course, we build on that as we go along, but I think you probably would agree with that after hearing your answer.
Very much so.
Yeah, it's the simple things that they tell you that you remember.
Well, and the thing about it is, it was a different generation too. So, my grandfather came from, the Great Depression, and so a different philosophy on work ethic, also about how you treat people, your word, and so on and so forth. And when I say word, that your word is your bond, So it just, unfortunately, in our society today, it's not as prevalent as I like to see. But the good news is that's something we adhere to in our firm, that if we say something, we're going to do it, and we're going to follow through. Even if it's painful for us, we're going to make sure that happens.
Exactly. That's fantastic. It's very powerful. We said you're headquartered in Charlotte. Your office is there. How many employees do you have?
Sure. So in that location, we have 18. And then, of course, we have our legal team that is scattered around. We actually have our head tax attorney is located in New York City. The rest of our team is in Texas, of course, in the Houston area in Austin. And then, of course, we're actually opening up an office down in the Jacksonville, Florida area here in the next couple weeks. So
that's great. And any question about how many employees, I always follow that with, you mentioned a few of them, but the different types of employees, are they all CPAs, attorneys, what?
Sure. So of course we have our legal team, our tax attorneys. We also have our CPAs, we have enrolled agents and accountants. So that makes a large portion of what we do, and then all of our support staff. I have my director of operations who runs everything. Of course, you met Nick, who's our executive vice president over our R&D department. And then, of course, we have our tax planning department as well. So that's made up of a lot of support. And, of course, our accounting is our biggest focus from that standpoint.
Right. Since I work with people, I work with managers, I work with teams, building teams and things like that, I'm always interested in someone's philosophy about hiring people, the type of thing you look for in an employee when you put a team together. Would you like to speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So, there's a lot of great people out there, Mike, as you know. And of course, resumes can look very, very flowery, I guess a good term. But what I'm looking for is passion. And like I said in our conversation earlier, they don't have to necessarily be passionate about saving people money or putting money in people's pockets from a tax savings, but passionate about something in their life. And so one of my interview questions I always ask is, outside of business, what makes you tick? What is it that you're passionate about that, if money was not an object you'd be plugged into? Because what I've found that people who are passionate about something, it could be their faith, it could be, a hobby or a cause, then I can see that can be that energy we can pull and utilize it in what they do with us. And so that's always a factor, is we want to make sure someone who is passionate about something in their life, that they're not just kind of sucking air, I guess you'd say, just to take a paycheck. Because we believe they can get behind the vision of the firm if they have passion in other areas.
We're 100% in agreement, or as a friend of mine used to say, I'm in violent agreement with you about that. I hired a lot of people when I was at a large corporation. And of course, HR has a large role in hiring at large corporations, and they can be kind of rigid sometimes, and I'm not criticizing them. And we had to ask each individual the same exact set of questions. They gave us questions to choose from. But if I ask you, question 1A, 2B, 3C, I had to ask everyone that same question. But to me, the most beneficial question I got to ask was the warm-up question, and I got to pick, it was fielder's choice.
That's it.
And I would ask people, what is not on your resume? You have an impressive resume, but what is on your resume, not on your resume, that if I knew it, you would be really proud for me to know it? And sometimes people, they maybe said one thing real quick and then they went right back to their resume. But other people got really passionate about their answer. Their face lit up. Their face lit up just like when you started telling me about your wonderful family. And I've had some really good hires made because of that answer. One of the HR partners told me once, she smiled and she said, "I know what you're doing." She said, "You still got to ask them the questions. I know what you're doing." But anyway, that's a great answer and a great philosophy for hiring.
Yeah. It's done well over the last 35 years, for sure.
Good. So you're in headquarters. We talked about your team. We talked about your people. Marketing. How do you market? Obviously I saw Nick at a conference.
Yes.
And was so impressed that I remembered actually enough about it to come up with some questions to ask you. So he was very, very excellent in his presentation. But how do you market? Do you travel? Do you go to conventions? Do you have marketing campaigns?
Yeah, great question, Mike. So we travel around the country. We do about 78 events this year here. We've done 21 this second quarter this year. So it is a lot of travel. But what we have found that if we can have face-to-face connections with, whether that's a medical professional, the dentals, whether that's other business owners, that we can share our story about who we are and what we do. And so that's predominantly, and then of course I just had a phone call on the way up here, is that joint venture or affiliate relationships. We have a lot of business owners who serve the same clientele that we do, who are interested in how can we work together to help our clients, being the doctors or whoever it may be. And so we find that that's a very strong, and of course we get a lot of referrals from CPAs, quite frankly. Last week I received an email saying, "You also did such a good job with my client. I'd like to refer over so-and-so over to you to have a conversation with them." And I believe right now we have about a half a dozen CPAs around the country who refer, some weekly and some once in a while. So,
So we talked about your office where you're headquartered, the employees and everything. Sometimes people don't like to give away all their trade secrets, but do you have any growth plans, expansion plans that you'd like to share today?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, we are in the process of looking for a larger office space. We actually have an offer in on a space that'll pretty much double, because our expectation is, because we, in some areas, some parallel areas like anesthesiologists and some other audiologists, some different ones that we have paralleled into, that once we have this infrastructure that we can accelerate quite a bit. And so, but ultimately, if we're going to be working in other professions, that we need to make sure we have the support staff to be able to do so. So we've been doing some shifting around, some new hiring, but also we have to accommodate from a space standpoint. And as I mentioned earlier, we have some remote staff members that we'd like to bring back in. Not necessarily that they have to be there all week long, but that we have that synergy going on, because a lot of collaboration goes on inside the office versus through Zoom or Slack or whatever it may be.
That's incredible. So I'd like to talk about COVID for a minute. COVID is something that affected every business, everyone, in a lot of different ways, and not just from actually contracting the disease, but just all the ancillary things that happened during COVID. You had to stay home, you had to do this. And there's a lot of challenges post-COVID. Would you like to address maybe if there were challenges that you faced, as we exit COVID, or have there been opportunities presented to you because of COVID?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. So, right when COVID happened, I set my staff down in March of 2020, and I said, listen, the reality is having a conversation with a doctor about research and development tax credits is not going to be on their horizon or on their radar right now, because they're all about keeping their business operational. So we pivoted and went very strong into the PPP program and helped hundreds and hundreds of doctors and professionals around the country. Now, what that did, it first of all helped a lot of business owners, which we were excited about doing that, but allowed us to have great credibility. I must have done probably 100 webinars in 2020 about PPP and EIDL and all ERTC and all the different things that the government put out. But what that has done, of course, all that has come to an end. Now we're facing opportunities to really drill down into those relationships and other referrals out to other groups, because they saw that we really were passionate about helping business owners, and that just conveys right over to the R&D department. So we're able to get, again, funds out there that they're entitled to that allow them to grow their businesses or expand, with new staffing or new opportunities. So that's where we see that the COVID situation, the post-COVID, has really allowed us to launch in a greater way.
You keep saying things that give me more ideas, and that's why this is just such a fascinating topic to me. You said a research and development department, so it's really an R&D department that's maybe just examining ways to improve processes and things like that. This would apply to them, even if they don't treat patients, as long as they're working on something that would improve a patient outcome. That seems to be the key thing we keep coming back to.
It truly is. Now, and a lot of folks believe that it's got to be academic, and the reality is most of the research and development credits that come about are not necessarily academic. Now, if you're at a school or a hospital, that would be the exception to that rule, but those are in private practice around the country or have a business around the country, that R&D comes into play. So we actually have a client that we just finished their materials. It was a dental lab up in the Northeast. And this dental lab actually, because of the materials they were using, the gold, which is not a cheap venture, that helped him get a significant amount of credit for his company, because they're utilizing materials above and beyond the wages. So because they're doing, they're testing different things. Dental labs come to mind because you do use quite a bit of materials. And of course, there's opportunity not just from the wages, but we can add on to the materials that they're using every year. So.
Fantastic. This has just been fascinating as we wind this down. This is the interview that I don't really want to end, but we're about out of time. So one of the last things I like to do is give the guest an opportunity to look into that camera right there. That's your camera. Tell us what you would want the customer to know.
So first of all, one of the requirements that we have is, first of all, that there be at least $250,000 in payroll between the owner and their staffing. So that is what I call a minimum. The second thing is that, again, they are improving upon protocols, upon increasing the performance of the patient. And so those are things we look at. And again, when I'm talking about the medical industry, and of course, if you're in manufacturing technology, that's going to be a very unique situation for us to have a conversation. The first step you need to do is do one of two things. Go to loveamericahatetaxes.com or to go to quartermastertax.com and schedule a complimentary review or discovery call, feasibility study of your particular situation. We have a great team, very well educated in the research and development area, that would be more than happy to gather up the information and determine whether or not you are a candidate for research and development tax credits. Again, we do not charge to do the feasibility study. If necessary, we'll even bring one of our tax attorneys onto the call to make sure, if you're in a unique situation, a unique type of business, on whether or not you qualify or not. So that would be the first thing, is to go to our website and make sure you go ahead and schedule your complimentary visit with our team. And then from there, I would say that if you want to call our office, it's 704-490-4111. And you're welcome to talk to any of our team and ask for our research and development department.
That's fantastic. And I can't thank you enough for coming on today.
Mike.
And ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. And like I said, we'll put all of the information that Don just gave you up on the website. My website, if you think that there's something you'd like to talk to me about, you can also book a free call at Mike at thegrowthfacilitator.com. That's my email, or you can go to thegrowthfacilitator.com, or simply my name, MikeHatton.com. And I do have some limited sponsorship slots still available if you're interested in that, or if you know someone that might be interested in being on the show that has a unique and interesting story such as Don had today. Please contact me and book the call, and we'll talk about your situation. Thank you so much for watching.
I want to thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the show and found something of value to help with the challenges you face as a leader. Please feel free to share this show with your friends on social media, and don't forget to visit my website, thegrowthfacilitator.com. And while you're there, book a free call with me. We'll see you next time on Cornerstone.